Today's Leader Path video is a full guide on writing the best possible CV, and if you wait to the end of the video there'll be a link to take you to a CV template that we'd like to share. Enjoy.
Welcome to Leaders Path, leadership journeys of people within the IT and business change professions. Brought to you by Middleton's Assured Talent, IT leadership and business change recruitment specialists.
Welcome to Leaders Path, the leadership and recruitment blog from presented to you by Middleton's Assured Talent. Today we're going to be talking about CV writing and sharing with you our top tips in terms of how to create the best possible CV. I've got a CV template that I want to share with everyone as well. So at the end of this video there'll be a link that you can follow to download that. I hope that will be useful. I guess the first question you're going to ask when you come to that situation where you're going to be applying for jobs is, do you update an old CV or do you create a new one altogether? I think more people will just update and add to previous CVs thinking that that'd be less time consuming, but I think it's really worth considering creating a new one, particularly if it's been a few years or a few jobs since you did create that original CV, because formatting evolves. I think often if you keep updating an old CV, it's hard to keep the same type of language and everything in a kind of flowing format. And actually there's another element. If you write it from scratch, actually it freshens your memory of all your past experience, which undoubtedly is going to be valuable when you're in that interview situation. The next thing for me, there's lots of CV writing rules out there, and to be fair, CVs are fairly subjective. Some people like certain elements, some people like different ones. There's no one hard fast way to write the best CV, but I think what's often missed with the CV writing rules that are talked about, and the one that particularly stands out for me is, people say that you should only have a 2-page CV, which I think is absolute nonsense. It's not that I think you should have a long CV, but I think it's missing the point just talking about the length of the CV. For me, the key aim that you've got to focus on is what is that CV trying to achieve? And really 99% of the times what the CV is trying to achieve is that you gain an interview. And the only way you're going to gain an interview is when the reader looks at it and not only thinks that you can do the job through the experience that you've presented, but actually thinks that you're better than most or all of the other CVs or candidates that they're looking at. So your CV's got to have impact, and it's got to stand out. And it's going to stand out through a few different sort of key sort of elements. The first and obvious one, it needs to be easily digestible. They need to be able to very quickly look at it and understand who you are, what you do, and the strengths that you can bring. Most people reviewing CVs do so quite quickly because they've got a lot of CVs to get through. So you've got to have that impact. And I think, again, going back to the length of CV rules, the impact's got to be there in the first page so that people want to read on. And I think if there is impact in that first page, someone will read on 2, 3, 4 pages potentially, because they'll be interested. But the key is creating that interest in the first page. The other thing that will add impact is making sure that in your CV you're very factual and actually you back up things that you've done with the quantifiable outputs of that. So, if there's, you delivered a particular project, but actually that project increased your company's turnover by 100%, let's say, that has impact, and it's that kind of information that will make your CV stand out. The other thing is, and it's again a bit of an obvious one, don't have any errors in there. One error can count you out. It's simple as that. And I'm not saying everyone has the level of attention to detail that when they're reviewing CVs that they might spot every error, but I know a lot of people that do, and if they see an error in a CV, they've pretty much discounted that individual. And it's the same with formatting. Make sure the formatting looks as good as it possibly can, because it will make a difference. So those are some core thoughts to have when you're writing the CV, and particularly when you come to review at the end. Does this CV meet the aim that it will gain me as an interview, which is the critical element? So the next thing is then actually creating the CV. Now, as I say, I've got a template that I'm going to share the link for at the end. Within that, there's a structure. Again, it's a structure I like to see, I like to follow. It's not the only way to write it, but I think it's a fairly common and good way to write it. So in that structure you'll see different sections, and then what I've done is I've written under each one just a slight descriptor of what I think should go in those areas, and a few pointers. You know, I'll very quickly run through that, and what I've done here is I've updated my own CV. Well, I rewrote my own CV because I realised that was going to be a better process than updating a very old one that I had. So first thing, profile. You know, here for me it needs to be very factual. You need to be clearly stating who you are and what you do, and stating the most pertinent facts to the type of role that you're applying for. Cut out any superlatives. They don't need to know how fantastic you are or how great you are, because, you know, it's kind of like, well, so what? It's easy for you as the writer to say those things. You know, it's about proving them. So be very factual. Include any things that you think are unique to you. Include any kind of facts that you think tie into why you are particularly strong in the roles or the vocation that you're applying into. And I think also, you know, a sentence or two that somehow kind of presents your passion and your engagement for particular aspects of your role, because I think that can send quite a strong message. But only put it in there if you feel comfortable with that. So for me, I've written here, I'm passionate about delivering great customer service to my clients and candidates, and I strive to continually be a positive force in my industry. Now, you know, could be said as being slightly cheesy, but the point is, if you just, you know, I am genuinely passionate about those things, and I think people will presume if I'm passionate about it, well, he's probably going to be good at it. And I think that's why revealing a couple of those elements in that profile can be useful. Next bit is key skills. Here, you're really playing a bit of buzzword bingo to a certain extent. You know, if your CV is going to go in a database, whether it's an online database or on an agency's database, most of the times you're going to be found through keyword searching. So it is important that the keywords are very clear within your CV, and key skills list is one of the ways of doing that. The other thing is most of the search engines have an algorithm that will order in kind of rank order of you know which CVs they think are most relevant to the search, and the kind of things that influence that are, you know, number of times that those keywords are mentioned and how close to the top of the document. So having a key skills list relatively high in the document will help. The other thing is, most readers of CVs, certainly the first read of any CV is usually a skim read. They'll briskly run their eyes over that front page of CV, and, you know, everyone might be slightly different, but they'll typically have key bits of information that they want to gather. And a key skills list can help with that. It can just very quickly deliver, these are the things that I think are my strengths, and someone can pick that up, whether consciously or subconsciously. They'll typically then look at what you're doing from a job point of view, look at the company that you're in, because again, these are all factors that they'll consider. They might then go back and read your profile in detail, and if there's enough interest, they'll then read the full CV in detail, or as far as they feel that they need to go. You know, don't get me wrong, some people read word for word from the beginning, but I think most people start with a skim read. The other thing to say about key skills, make sure that the skills you list are, you know, the skills known in their most commonly known form, so that you know, you're not missing out on someone writing the commonly known keywords for that skill or this. You know, making sure that your CV will be come up in that. For more technical people, again, this is where you can list your key technical skills. You know, you can subcategorize. So, you know, if you want to list your coding skills, have a list of those, and then you might have a second bullet point that says operating systems, and so on and so on, just to kind of categorize the different technology areas that you've had experience of. Whether you're technical or not, I would be cautious not to just list any old skill that you've ever feel you've touched on or had to kind of use in your job. You need to be able to answer questions in these, because a lot of interviewers will focus on what you list as your key skills and really kind of question around them. So if you can't answer you know, questions on what you've classed as your key skills, it's generally not seen as the you know, the best. Next thing is your experience. So reverse chronological order, definitely wanting the start of that experience to be still on the first page of the CV. Again, just so that when they do that initial skim read, they can very quickly see what you're doing at the moment. I think people should, again, fairly obviously, you know, company name, the specific dates, and I mean specific, you know, so month as well as year. If there's gaps, that's fine. Reveal the gaps, because often in referencing process, those gaps are discovered, so you want to be open about them. And then job title. One point to make about job titles: sometimes people have a title that's less commonly known. So you might be called X in an organisation, but generally in the marketplace that would be known as Y. So what I think people should do in that situation is be honest and state what your actual job title is, but then maybe put a dash or a slash or some other way of saying, but here's the more generic term for what it is that I do. Now, don't mislead by this. Don't try and say you're something that you're not, but don't be concerned about, just presenting your job title or what you do in that way, because it will help. But make sure you're comfortable with it. As I say, we're not trying to mislead anyone. We're just trying to create clarity about what you do. The next thing is 2-3 sentences tops, just giving a high-level overview of what it is that you do and where you fit into the organisation. So, you work in this particular department and I've got core responsibilities for this. So just revealing a bit of the purpose of the role. You then want to go into the specifics. So bullet points now, just very kind of overtly stating the specifics of what you do in your role. Now, there's a fine balance here between stating every single minutiae of the responsibility you have and actually just giving the stuff that means has, I guess, is more pertinent to someone thinking about whether you're suitable or not for the role. There's probably a lot of presumptions made that if you're a recruitment consultant that you will do certain tasks, and listing those tasks is not necessarily going to be add a lot to your CV. So make sure it's the pertinent stuff, the stuff that actually counts for something, and where you can, if there's metrics to add, if there's size of responsibility, these kind of things, just give enough detail. For technical people, this is where I would list technologies again. So be specific about the technologies you're using within that particular role, but also be specific about what you're doing with them, what systems you are creating, what are those technologies are doing within that. Now, again, there's a fine balance between, sort of the right level of detail and too much information, but just create some context and what you in terms of what you're doing, what you're using those technologies for. And then the next bit, highlights. You could call this highlights, you could call it projects delivered, you could call it achievements. Principally what you're going to list here are the things that you feel you can shout about and will have that impact. These are the bits that may just make the difference and make someone think that you're that bit better than the other 10 CVs that they're looking for. And I think what really helps in that is where you can be specific with metrics, when you can give a time frame of achievement and the specific numbers. What value did that bring the business, or what cost saving did that create, or what benefits? It's really about, I did this, but this is what the outcome was, and this is the value it brought, because that's what brings the real impact. You then keep going on, flowing through previous roles. When you start going one step back, you're cutting down a bit of information. The next step, again, you're cutting out a bit more. I think once you've got beyond 3, or maybe your third or fourth role, you're really cutting down to maybe 2-3 sentences. Again, that depends on what the duration of those roles are. I think, again, if you're going beyond 6 or 7 years, you're getting to a point where the detail of those roles will probably need to be less. I think most people are more interested in the last 5 or 6 years of what you've been doing. But it's not to say they won't be interested in your past. So again, some people cut out, they might say, well, I'm not going to present any information of what I did, more than 10 years ago. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think quite a lot of people will find that just leaves questions unanswered. It's, well, where did they start their career? How did they progress to where they are now? Sometimes even if it's not relevant, you might find that there's something in that past that that has an affinity with the reader of the CV, and they go, that's where I came from, and that just may help. So, as I say, there's nothing particularly wrong with really cutting out the early days of your career, but I would just have a think about it, and you can even just put a job title and company name and dates for early jobs. You don't have to put any information if you don't want to, but again, it just gives them the complete story. So you run through that, and then the next section near the back is education. So this is where you're going to list education, training, courses, accreditations, that type of thing. Decide what you feel is pertinent to the jobs that you're applying for. I've seen CVs that have literally every single training course that they've ever done listed there, and I don't think there's merit in doing that. If it's a training course that has particular pertinence to the job you're doing, of course. If it's accreditations, definitely, because again, that just demonstrates credibility and often a kind of self-drive to actually become, credited in the vocation that you're within. The university is usually still important. I don't think people will select on that, but again, they might be interested to see if it's there. Again, it's not prerequisite. Obviously, a lot of people don't have degrees and have very successful careers. Just choose what you feel is pertinent to the type of jobs you're applying for. And then finally, and this bit's optional, personal interests and achievements. What this definitely shouldn't be is a list of your hobbies that you that you like reading and badminton and that kind of thing, because no one's really that interested in that. Where I think this is worth having is when you may be involved with some voluntary causes. You may have raised money for charity, you may have run your own personal projects, you may just stuff that shows that you've got some drive to go and do other things to help other people, things of note. If you don't have any, that's fine. Just don't have it in there. Just make sure the things are in there. People, you're confident people read and say, yeah, actually, these are things that show that this person's got, a positive attitude and wants to do more than just sit on the couch when they get home. And that's it. As I say, I think, if someone's CV is getting to the 3-4 pages mark, that's fine. Contractor CVs sometimes a little bit different, can be longer because there's more. There's certainly more likely to be more jobs to list. But again, I think anything beyond 5 pages is probably getting a bit long. But just the key thing is just going back to what we talked about as the aim. Is this document going to get me an interview? And I think what the key thing to test that is to speak to your friends, ask them to read it, and ask them to read it from that mindset. If you received this CV, would you interview this person for this type of role? And get them to try and be as objective as possible in the review of that. And if there's suggestions, make the amendments and end up with something that you're comfortable with. But then also be ready to make any changes for each role that you apply for. This structure of CV for me is written in a way that allows you to very quickly and easily change lists of bullet points, swap the order, add things in that you feel will be more pertinent to a particular role. Hopefully that's quite a quick process. So I would definitely recommend that you review and amend for any particular application you're making. And also be conscious in job adverts and in job specifications of the language that's used, the keywords that are used, making sure that your CV, where possible, mirrors those. Don't, as I've seen it happen a couple of times, literally copy and paste lines of a spec into your CV, because that just is crazy. But as I say, just make sure that there's as much alignment with those keywords and language as they possibly can. So that's our CV writing advice. I will share the link to gain that template CV at the end of this video. Thank you very much.
Welcome to Leaders Path, leadership journeys of people within the IT and business change professions. Brought to you by Middleton's Assured Talent, IT leadership and business change recruitment specialists.